Well, joining us today on this special broadcast is Shiv Sena leader Priyanka Chaturvedi, Member of Parliament Rajya Sabha, and one of the most prominent women leaders from Maharashtra. Very warm welcome to you, Priyanka Chaturvedi. Thank you so much for joining us here on Mirror Now. Let me begin by asking you first about the recent events. The recently concluded Parliament session, and you remained suspended for the entire session. You said that the suspension has been against all rules. Now, what do you have to say? Is there a price to pay for taking an aggressive position in Parliament the way that you have?
My response is just something which I think the country knows. If they look at my parliamentary track record, if they look at my performance in terms of presence in the Parliament, attendance, participation with regards to question hour, zero hour, is out there. It's in the public domain as to my participation. My journey in the Parliament began just a while ago, a year and a half ago, but I have managed to raise issues that concern the people of this country. The suspension on the basis of some misconduct, perceived misconduct, has been judged without even taking my point of view. Any natural course of justice would say that even an accused gets a chance to put their defense forward. I wasn't given that, neither were the other members of Parliament. With regards to bad behavior, misbehavior, again, on the basis of some CCTV footage which was leaked out by the Government of India, it does not have the complete footage. Neither did we as suspended members of Parliament. And I think, this misbehavior and the so-called punishment meted out to us also goes against the parliamentary rules and procedures that were cited to suspend us. So all I'd like to say is they can try and silence my voice, but they will definitely fail at it. I might be suspended, but can't be silenced.
You know, but the argument from the other side has been that the opposition wants debates to happen, but then when it comes to it, when a speaker tries to address the issue, the opposition doesn't let the House function. Are you sure you've been a constructive opposition? Contrary to what is being portrayed, that this has been an extremely obstructionist attitude?
Okay, so if you look at constructive opposition, with regards to students who were flying abroad for higher education, reducing their vaccine dosage gap was initiated by me as a request. Requesting pregnant women and lactating mothers to be brought into the vaccination ambit, I believe, is being a constructive opposition and requesting for changes to happen in the policy which happened. With regards to Air India employees not getting their health insurance was something I raised, and I think I have been constructive. I can cite many such examples of being constructive member of Parliament and constructive opposition leader in terms of my debate participation, and it is for public knowledge and it's out there in the public domain. Now, having said that, now coming to your saying that the ministers want to have a discussion, they want to have a debate, I would like to ask you, since 2014, you all have been covering the Parliament, how many debates have happened initiated by the government on the agenda of the people of this country? Farm law bills were brought into the system going against the federal structure of this country without taking the state governments, which is actually a state subject, agriculture. You all have passed and pushed through a bill because of the brute majority you enjoy, without any debate, without any discussion, and without even acknowledging that there is a need for it to go to a standing committee or a select committee that the opposition was demanding for. And you, 1.5 years after the protest that began by the farmers, you were forced to pull it back. Again, you will not have a debate on it. You will not allow opposition to have a word on it. You pull it back. Now, the second example I'd like to give you. India saw a very unfortunate tragedy where a sitting chief defense of CDS died in a chopper crash, and so did his colleagues who were traveling on that chopper crash. After the defense minister spoke, democracy would say that leader of opposition should also be able to offer their condolences on this tragedy. He was not even allowed to do that. Every time the leader of opposition stands up, in fact, the House is adjourned.
You know, but suspending 12 MPs, it's a big number, isn't it? Aren't you that many numbers down in your strength from the opposition benches? Is it not hurting your cause as well? Does not mean that, you know, the issue has backfired because you were not there when important bills were discussed, debated. You had to remain absent by virtue of the suspension.
How did our voices get silenced? How did our numbers come down? through an authoritarian order that was passed, which was going against the parliamentary democracy. So that is how the numbers went down, because here's a government which is running roughshod as far as its numbers are concerned. Now, last, I'd just like to point out a bigger thing. And I think the bigger challenge, and the bigger, you talk about it as backfiring in a particular session and people of the country. I think people of the country would be at a bigger disadvantage when we won't have a parliamentary democracy at all. Now, the larger question is, and the larger purpose is, that can the bills be passed without the opposition's points being considered? Can bills be passed in a democracy without hearing the dissenting voice of the opposition? If the government and the treasury benches have been given a responsibility because of their sheer numbers by the people of this country have also elected and nominated some members of parliament and some political parties as opposition. You cannot treat them like they do not have a voice, they cannot speak up, they cannot speak on issues that matter to the public. And that is the bigger danger in this country, that things can get passed, things can get cleared with or without the opposition in presence, and you will just continue to silence us. You'll take off our mics, you will take off our the broadcasting that happens so that people understand what is happening, and you will leak selective media footage, and you all will, as media channels, instead of questioning the government and the treasury benches, you all will come and say, oh, listen, it got spectacularly backfired. I don't know what is our charge here.
Okay, so then let's just talk about the bills that were taken up this time around. Let's talk about the marriage bill, for instance, the increasing of the permissible age for marriage for women in India to 21. The bill has been moved to the standing committee. It is under consideration. But I want to know your take on it. Is it going to empower women? Is it going to help increasing the age limit for marriage to 21 from 18?
Everything that looks progressive does not necessarily become progressive on ground. I have valid concerns about something like this, where a legislation, a government order will decide when a woman can marry. I find it extremely discouraging that every woman bill that has come since 2014 have come by denying women their agency to take this call. And at 18, a woman or a male, for that matter, can decide who they want as the Prime Minister of this country. They can also decide who their municipal corporator would be, their local body representative would be. They can take such a big decision for the nation, but they can't take that decision for their own selves. What is unfortunately happening is we've outlawed child marriages in 1978. We continue to record a high number of child marriages. What changes can come through societal mindset, by enabling societies, are coming through legislation. It will not do anything for women on the ground. It will only criminalize many families who will choose to get their daughters married off irrespective of a law that prevails. Now, my second question on this is, my second belief on this is that you say, oh, their health parameters would increase, they would be able to take decisions at the age of 21, they would be educated. You do not, now look at the rural areas, you do not have a fully functional primary health center in place. You do not have adequate doctors specializing in women's health issues and reproductive issues in these PHCs. How are you creating an enabling environment through this legislation? Then you talk about education. What makes you believe that parents will continue to support their children in their education and send their daughters to long distances to complete their education? How many villages have graduate degrees? However, I would continue to say, when you have a Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao like scheme, and 80% of those funds that are allocated to the state governments, but those state governments are using it for the need of creating that enabling environment, the central government funds are being used only for advertising and PR purposes. So I think if allocation of funds are done in a manner which creates an enabling society, that is when women will be enabled. Unfortunately, I'm seeing many news reports coming in where people are now rushing into marriages before such kind of a law kicks in. You're doing a huge disservice to the women of this country by continuing to deny them their agency. And that is not empowerment. That is through legislation, are running around on your will on how women should lead their lives.
Okay, you talk about being removed from ground realities. Now, the same allegation is also leveled against the Shiv Sena in Maharashtra. Aditya Thackeray has been pitching for the booster dose. He's written to the Union Ministry, Health Ministry again, reminding them of the booster dose and how it needs to be introduced. World over, there is no consensus yet that it is going to be some magic that will reduce the spread of COVID. But what I want to understand from you is, what about the ground implementation of the norms and the curbs? Where are the COVID squads that the Shiv Sena government had promised? We see very poor enforcement of rules.
Booster dose is being given globally, in many countries, to people who are at risk. With Mr. Thackeray asking for this to happen, because it cannot be a state perspective, it has to be driven by the center. That is why the demand has gone to the center. I am sure you acknowledge that under the Epidemic Act, it will be the center which will take a decision on this. State cannot do that. And we respect the federal structure of this nation, so that was the reason why this was demanded. Now, in terms of what is happening on ground, India, Maharashtra being populated, Maharashtra showing high numbers, I think it also has to do with maintaining the transparency of numbers and keeping people aware of the situation on ground. I'm sure you would also be sensitive to the fact that everything that we do in our daily lives cannot be only strictly implemented by the state till citizen participation is absolutely nil. We cannot leave the onus, especially in something like this, where health for every single citizen, while we create policies, health also is very individual driven. And citizens, in fact in Maharashtra, are cooperating with the state government to the fullest. Now, to say the state government is not doing its 100%, maybe we are doing 100%, maybe there are some loopholes that exist. We will not shy away from ensuring that the whatever work we do is implemented on ground. But I'm very certain Maharashtra is not the only state which is facing such kind of high numbers. You're seeing elections happen in Uttar Pradesh, people coming out in large numbers, including the Prime Minister of this country, including the Home Minister who had a massive rally in Pune. So that is happening. So it would be nice if we look at it as a whole rather than targeting states and its implementation. If there are any loopholes, we are willing to plug loopholes, but I will not be able to accept this charge that because he's asking for booster dose, why isn't he looking within? I'm sorry, that's a central responsibility. Center has to take that call.
So this is a party, Priyanka Chaturvedi, that you have moved to from the Congress party. How has it been for you? The Shiv Sena has completed 2 years in the state of Maharashtra. How do you assess their performance? What is your take on their performance?
Now, for you to ask me if X versus Y, I will not get into that. Second, you asked me, was it a career choice? More than a career choice, it was a leap of faith on the basis of how women are regarded in politics. Of course, it has a lot to do with career choices as well. It is choices that you make at some point in time where you see that the respect and the dignity that you deserve is being denied to you. And you'd rather, from your perspective and from a perspective of being a woman in politics as well as a mother to 2 children, standing up for yourself and standing up for things that you believe in is something which is more important for me. And I think I did what I had to, and it has only helped me contribute positively. And I'm in a political party which is enabling more and more women in the system by giving them positions of power and acknowledging their contribution to the society as a whole.
But you know, there are a number of MPs and MLAs from the Shiv Sena who are under the ED scanner today. Why is that happening?
I think that is a question that should be asked to the central government, where they have co-opted the ED, the IT, now the Narcotics Bureau as part of its election campaign strategy, as part of its strategy to try and destabilize governments that are run by, that are not run by the Bharatiya Janata Party. This was a political party, Bharatiya Janata Party, which used to call CBI a caged parrot. I somehow feel it's now a dead parrot, which is doing whatever, it's moving around the way the center wants it to move. So this is a question which needs to be asked to the government, and it also needs to be asked by these independent institutions. How much will you bend and how much will you crawl? because things change, systems change, people change, governments change. Our systems cannot be compromised at the altar of those who are in power.
You're talking about change, we are talking about change, how you move from the Congress to Shiv Sena. But one thing that I notice, and you'll probably agree, that doesn't change, even with your changing of parties, is the rampant sexism, even in the political class. We just heard a rather disgusting comment of a Congress MLA saying enjoy rape when it's inevitable. Then you have someone of the level of Shashi Tharoor taking a picture with women parliamentarians, captioning it with how, highlighting the attractiveness quotient and how that makes Parliament attractive. Are women not competent? Don't they have skills? Is attractiveness the only factor when it comes to women? How do you deal with this sexism?
How do I deal with it? I believe that coming from a patriarchal society with barriers that were created for women, though constitutionally we were treated as equals, however, in practice we were not. We live in a very male-dominated society. We are working in a very male-dominated domain. So at times it does become difficult to explain sensitivities to people. However, this can only change when you have more women on the decision-making tables. You have more women who sit shoulder to shoulder with men at such places for this kind of rampant sexism to end. But it is an unfortunate part of who we are, and it can only, I would say, you can only see a change when you have more women out there in the Parliament and make people realize to the sensitivity of what they speak, how they speak, and how it comes across about women. So they become part of that enabling culture that continues to treat women as second-class citizens in this country. It is unfortunate, but it exists. It cannot be denied. We fight it out every single day, whether it is on social media, whether it is in other places. We are doing that, and I think till we women as a whole do not speak up on such rampant misuse of words and the kind of statements that emanate from people who are within the society, and they are elected representatives from the society we live in. So till we do not speak up as one whole unit, unfortunately, there would be people who may not realize this.
Right. I do hope that, that message goes across, because what we need are real policies that will empower women, not some poll sops giving 1,000 rupees a month, and not these empty kind of promises, but some real, solid, tangible policy which will empower and uplift the living conditions, the social conditions, the education level of women in this country. I hope as a woman leader, as a representative in Parliament, you will continue to push for these issues. Priyanka Chaturvedi, thank you so much for talking to us today.